When culture consumes culture, the pain can reverberate for generations, even centuries. Now, Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission marks a hopeful addition to this ugly cycle, a blueprint for healing. Coming up, guest hosts Eternia and Sheldon Neal listen into the Aboriginal community as we ask, what does healing look like, or sound like, or feel like? Find out as we listen for Canada's lost voices. This is Context, a look at life beyond the headlines.
Welcome to Context with Lorna Dueck. I'm Eternia.
And I'm Sheldon Neal, and we're both so grateful to Lorna Dueck for loaning us the keys to the car this week.
And for a chance to dive deep into this idea of truth and reconciliation.
In 2008, Prime Minister Stephen Harper issued a formal apology for Canada's role in the aggressive assimilation of Aboriginal children through the government-supported church-run residential schools. From that came the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Yet for many within Aboriginal cultures, the pain continues. But what is needed to reach healing? What does healing look like? Will there be a moment where the pain stops? For insight, we look to our first guest.
That's right. She's a celebrated and award-winning author, poet, educator, and storyteller. Please welcome Lee Markle to Context.
So after 4 years, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, has its final event. They've done 4 years of hearings. How does that feel?
Well, first of all, I don't call it in my mind and in my heart a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. When reconciliation happens, two parties get together, one that has victimized the other, and they reconcile. That didn't happen. It's really a big disclosure by 7,000 Aboriginal people about what happened to them. And then it's disclosure by some of the children of those survivors or some of the people that have become friends of survivors. But none of the people that were in those institutions doing the hurting had to face anybody. So that's not reconciliation to me. It's disclosure. And on my bad days, I think it's voyeurism.
What does, in your point of view, healing look like in a way that could bring closure to this?
Well, I think first let's declare the first sickness, which is the residential school system, which is not us. But we're the ones doing the healing. And I think there's a big problem there. I think, all of those people that were party to this should be doing some healing work as well. They're the sick ones. What happened to us is that this very highly orchestrated implosion occurred, and we've had to pick ourselves up and put ourselves back together. And it's the repairing of fracture that occurred in our communities, both inside ourselves individually and between us, and the reclaiming of culture that has been going on. And our folks call it healing because being alive well is the goal in life. To be well. It's not a goal in Canada. To be successful is, right? But we need to be alive well to pass on to the other world. And that's why we call it healing. There's no other word in English that describes what we mean when we say be alive well. But the way it's put, it sounds like we're the sick ones. I don't buy it,
When I look at a lot of your work as an educator, storyteller, poet, you almost work that way of healing, that way of passing on into your work. I'm curious to know, how do words facilitate healing?
In my culture, in the Salish people, we say, words have power, they have impact. Words have power, they have impact. I know I learned in grade 1, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's entirely not true. Science is bearing it out, that the only language that actually helps you is story and poetry, and the poetics of story. That actually, when you write something and you read it out loud, you're actually strengthening your body so that it can repair its own damage. That's why I do it.
Now, this is Canada's history collectively. How does the suffering of students in the residential schools impact all Canadians, Native and non-Native?
Well, that's the part I don't like about this whole business of, it's the second part of who's going to be victimized. What's going to happen is we're going to take all this information, it's horror, the horror show of the government, and foist it on 15-year-old non-Native kids who did nothing to deserve that. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't know that there was such a thing as residential school, but I don't think it's Canada's responsibility to take that on. Canadians didn't go into those residential schools and sign me up, I want to abuse somebody. That's not what happened. It was the government, the church, and the few criminals that were in there and protected in those institutions that did it. And that superintendent that said, oh, well, if they're dying, isn't that the point? That's what happened. Now, Canadians don't deserve children. That's what they're going to do. They're going to take it to your schools. They don't deserve that.
I was reading something and you said about all the healing process, you said one thing to really keep people oppressed is to remove their ability to imagine. Once imagination is gone, you can't really hope for a better tomorrow.
Exactly.
So how do we restore imagination?
Well, this is a beautiful thing that's already been done, but it can be done again and again. My daughter, Kalumpa Bob, was asked to do the play to open up and launch the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She said, no, I'm not going to do a story about residential school. That's my dad's story. It's my mom's story, not my story. But I tell you what I will do. I'll take a group of non-Native kids and a group of Native kids, neither of which have been to residential school, research it and write about the impact on them. And this gorgeous play about being teenagers without full voice, being young people that are, all kinds of assumptions are made out of them, came out of that, and it's woven together with these elders' stories about the lack of freedom in residential schools and the oppression that occurred there. So there's this beautiful Canadian story about where freedom can go and where our young people want to go with freedom.
So does that mean, with all this discussion about accountability, reconciliation, these words that we hear all the time, is there a big point that we're missing?
There's a really huge point that we're missing. Not all is well. I think that's the huge point that's missing. That the things that have happened to people, immigrants in this country, are being forced to work 2 jobs. They're invited here and they're not employed here. I mean, Canada has still got some very bad habits of mistreating people. Somebody has to be at the bottom. That seems to be the way it's going, the way it has gone historically. So maybe it has something to learn from not putting somebody at the bottom for everybody else to trod on.
A mindset change.
Yes, a mindset change. The problem here is that there was oppression. That's the problem, that somebody deemed them lower. And that happens today.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, but more so, thank you for telling a different story.
Now it's time to hear from you watching at home.
And for your chance to win a pick from Lorna's book club.
What do you think? What does peace look like for Canada's Aboriginal communities coming off generations of abuse?
Please send your answers by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter. You could win a copy of the book When Justice is the Measure, co-written by Context's own Christine McMillan.
When we return, residential school survivors speak out at the final Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearing. We speak to a TRC commissioner next.
But first, from award-winning author and poet, Lee, you have a poem that you would love to share. I can't wait to hear it. Yeah.
This was actually written for a Truth and Reconciliation book called Buffalo Shout, Salmon Cry, and it was performed in the Moving Gallery, which is the play I talked about. Sletwatut chetu sanok kokotlam. The mountains rise behind my ancestors and retreat from our care in the sale of them, orchestrated by a department that sought our vanquishment. $25 became millions in the blink of an eye. $25 became hunger, cold in the next blink. Food became inadequate. The murder of cedar, sea vegetables, osque, whale, and sockeye crippled our ability to eat. We struggled to mature without food. Mr. Harper, sorry. Me too. We could have recovered from smallpox. We could have recovered from other epidemics. We had shui shui, we had medicine, we had songs and dances, but we were banned from singing, dancing, and using medicine. We could have recovered. We had friends, Christian friends, but they were banned from helping us. We could have said something, but we were banned from speaking about land rights, fishing rights, and the right to educate our children. Blind justice. This is a call song. Settlers did not come here as blind men. They witnessed murder. Some of them killed us. Some of them still kill us. They witnessed the murder of cedar, of vegetables, of sockeye, the poisoning of our lands. Everyone is sorry now. Me too.